All right, in this lesson, we are learning about digestion and absorption, which is topic 6.1. All right, some dot points here. They are not all of them. Okay, the rest are covered in our part 2 because these are quite complex processes. So while there's not a lot of dot points in this unit anyway, it's surprisingly complex anyway. All right, digestion. Digestion is the process of breaking down food into its essential nutrients, and they need to be absorbed into the bloodstream and delivered into cells where they can be used. The digestive system is made up of so many different parts, but essentially it's an open tube from mouth to anus, right? Really attractive. The food passes through all these different points and it breaks down into smaller compounds through catabolic processes, and then it's absorbed. Okay, now we're talking about those macromolecules we learned in topic 2, so carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, as well as DNA and RNA, and eventually our digestive system removes waste as well. From a macroscopic standpoint, we're looking at the bigger picture. These are the organs that we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of the mouth, the esophagus, stomach, small intestines, the large intestines, that's that main digestive tract part, but also the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas are accessory organs to this process. They're all involved here. All right, they're the main parts of it. There's obviously lots and lots of other parts. If we look at the inside of the digestive tract, we've got that tube section, and you're going to see lots of different ways of depicting it, I suppose. But inside that tube, right in the middle, the part that's touching the hole, I suppose, if you think of it like a hose, it's called the epithelial layer. It's also known as the mucosa. There's the submucosa underneath that. Then there's a muscle layer, and then there's an outer coating. So you can see it's quite complex, and we'll go into more detail later on. Again, there's that picture of that tube. It's just done up a bit nicer, I suppose, and there's lots of layers throughout that tract part, not including those accessory organs. So the locations of the tract mean that the cells are shaped a bit differently depending on what the function of that is. So if you have a look here at the small intestine, these have quite long finger-like projections coming out of those cells because that's where most of the absorption is happening, whereas if we look at in the large intestines, it's not so much about absorption anymore, so those giant finger-like projections to increase the surface area is not really needed. From a microscopic standpoint, this is what those finger-like projections look like, okay? They're known as villi, and they're mostly found in the small intestine. They're quite pretty, okay? But they are, there's a 3D depiction of them as well. So the blood supply runs really closely up to that outer edge of cells, and that allows for the nutrients to be absorbed in and then go directly into the bloodstream as well. All right, so from a macroscopic standpoint, this is what I was talking about. We've got that single layer of epithelium cells right on the inside mucosa, and the blood, so the capillaries here, this red one, are running very close so they can do that absorption. If we have a look closely at the layers again, that mucosa are those epithelial lining cells, so they absorb the nutrients and have a high surface area. Got the submucosa underneath, which is just that one layer inside and carries the blood and the lymph vessels. The muscle layer, and there's actually 2 types of muscles that run here. There's circular and there's longitudinal, and they squeeze through that tube to help the food move through, as well as the serosa, which is that outside point. You'll see lots of different pictures of them. So that's another section of tissue from the digestive tract, but then there's also all those different areas of the tract. All right, digestive system requires 2 things to get it moving as well: surfactants and enzymes. Now, surfactants break up lipid molecules, and the enzymes obviously are there to catalyze the reactions. And these are our accessory organs that help in that, the pancreas, as well as the gallbladder. They're really important. And then if we have a look here, we're talking about salivary glands as well. Digestive processes are quite complex. We're going to talk about the mechanical and the chemical digestion, but remember there's also the absorption, but that is going to be in our second part. All right, mechanical digestive processes. Number 1, chewing and churning. Obviously, our chewing is that first port of call for breaking down large chunks of food. Our teeth and tongue go through that grinding motion. It's also known as mastication. All right, when we swallow, the food moves as a bolus down our esophagus, all right, that tube that leads to the stomach, and the epiglottis, which is at the back of our throat there, actually covers the trachea or the windpipe so that we don't get food down there. Sometimes, obviously, we say it's gone down the wrong path and we start to have a bit of a choke, but that's generally not the norm. Once the food gets into the stomach actually does that physical churning. It's extremely muscular, and it moves that food around, mixes it up with the stomach acid, and it's now called chyme. All right, another part of mechanical mechanical digestion is called peristalsis. Now, peristalsis is a wave of muscle contractions in circular and longitudinal smooth muscle in the digestive tract. So it's unconscious. It's happening without us thinking about it. It mixes the chyme, so that food bolus, in with enzymes and moves it along the digestive tract as well. It's got to sort of speed it up. The enzymes have to be there to speed it up because the breakdown's otherwise going to be quite slow. Now, it's often short bursts of really vigorous contractions, and it's combined with continuous moderate force. So it's always happening in a sort of small sense. It doesn't just wait for us to have food in our stomach and then really start and go hard. Now, it's a contraction of circular muscle, right? So it's kind of squeezing in that direction as well as kind of massaging stuff to go down that tube. So there's circular muscle contractions and longitudinal muscle contractions, which you can kind of see in both of these images. It is unconsciously controlled and it only goes in one direction. However, when your ab muscles kind of take over when you're, say, vomiting, then it kind of goes backwards a little bit. But generally, it only goes in one direction, which lets you, swallow if you're upside down, standing on your head or something like that. This is quite a slow process, okay? And so it's only really moving a few centimeters at a time just to allow that absorption of nutrients, say, through the small intestines so that the nutrients can be absorbed into the bloodstream. Now, if we talk about chemical processes, we've got to think about, say, stomach acid. All right, that's number one. It's made by parietal cells which line the stomach, and it can get the stomach down to a pH of about 2, which is incredibly low. Now, the pH obviously then denatures proteins, which starts to unravel them, which is helpful for digestion. There's a mucous membrane around the inside of the stomach, so your stomach lining, and what that does is protects those stomach cells from actually being damaged by the acid. And the pancreas can make more alkaline solutions so that when the chyme comes out of the stomach and goes into the small intestines, instead of damaging those cells with all the acid, it actually kind of neutralizes it or adds something in to neutralize it. Now, bile is made in the gallbladder and it's called an emulsifier. And what it does, it breaks down lipids, like you might see if you squirt a bit of dishwashing liquid into an oily tray or something like that. It makes little small droplets, and what that does is increase the surface area so that when this fatty stuff hits the enzymes, the lipases, it's going to be able to work a bit faster to break them down. Now, pancreatic juices is really, really important. The pancreas is an accessory organ, and what happens is it actually kind of puts its juices directly into the small intestine. Now, it has a hormonal function, okay? It makes insulin and glucagon, which regulates our blood sugar, but it also has these digestive juices function, and they're secreted from different cells. Now, once you start eating, your nervous system and your stomach starts sending a lot of signals to the pancreas that, hey, we need some of these enzymes, start making them, start pushing them into the small intestines. And the acinar, cells, they are the ones making those enzymes, and they have lots and lots of ribosomes, obviously, because enzymes are proteins, and those ribosomes are making those proteins, and they exocytose them into these little kind of tube situations here. So it's like having a bit of a piping system, and eventually it will flow straight into the small intestines. Now, amylase, that's one particular type of enzyme that is made in the pancreas, and we know it breaks down sugars. Now, it's also made in the saliva, so you can start breaking down sugars as soon as you get it into your mouth. We also have lipases, which digest fats, and combined with that bile from the gallbladder can help digest those lipids. We've also got proteases and endopeptidases, which break down proteins and peptides as well. And also when we eat food and animal material, we need to be able to break down, plant and animal material, we need to be able to break down DNA and RNA. So we have nucleases as well. This is BioNinja's delightful summary, okay? It is quite comprehensive, but it is really continually over and over saying the same types of enzymes because we are breaking down the same types of macromolecules. Here are our syllabus dot points. Please make sure you understand that this is not all of them. These are quite complex processes.